Hey, I am Chris Swink. Today, we know the job search kind of sucks, particularly for the job seeker. Today, we're talking about how we can align the tools more on the job seeker side than the employer. Today on Culture Builder Live. Hey again, I am Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, a news organization with a community of technology professionals we help companies hire from. Today, I'm joined by Rennie Haylock. He's the founder of Hunter, an HR tech platform we'll hear about in a moment. But Rennie, first, thanks for being here. And start me off with the basics. I think we all assume and talk about the idea that the job search sucks, but I think we've been talking about that for 10, 20, or I don't know, 200 years. So why are we still assuming that the job search sucks? Why is it still so misaligned?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah, I think there's really a disconnect between the tools that we as software builders build and revenue models, and we have
Mm,
employers on one end that have like these massive budgets where they can spend in all these tools like applicant tracking systems, job search aggregators, interview scheduling software. There's so many big budgets there. So as entrepreneurs, it's a lot easier to monetize from the employer side. At Hunter, I started Hunter because I really hated the job search when I went through it, and I was looking for a software opportunity, and I was applying, to 20, 30, 40 jobs. Those were living between my email, Indeed, LinkedIn, all over the place. And it was really hard to track it. So Hunter is just a job search tracker. And in order to align our software and the way we build with job seekers' needs, what we found is we also build this tool for educational institutions, so higher education, boot camps, and they are very well aligned with the job seekers' needs. What's best for the job seeker is best for these educational institutions. So we found a way to kind of like get around the whole. We need to bring the employer into the fold. So suddenly, if most of your revenue is coming from the employer, then you're building tools for the employer, not really for the job seeker. So we see this as a way of really empowering job seekers and offering them the tools that they need to be at par with what employers are doing.
So there's a huge asymmetry in power and in budget and in spend. Obviously, as you're alluding to, lots of job seekers are doing the job search as a part-time endeavor at best, and companies are throwing full-time support there. That's interesting. That makes sense to me. How much, not to fall into the pandemic cliche, but things have shifted quite a bit. We're reporting a whole lot on wage inflation, on a huge realignment in the job search. I don't need to evoke the Great Resignation story of the last 6 months, but I have to feel like some of that power dynamic that is further tightened power in the hands of the job seekers has changed something. Do you give me your real talk? Is this like a a change that has longevity? Is more power going to stay with job seeker for the long haul, or is this pure temporary transitory disruption to the job marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think I mean I don't have like a great answer for that. I think it's
Yeah.
so subjective. It really depends on the space you're in. Obviously, like with Hunter, we serve mostly people in the tech space. It just happens to be that when Hunter was launched, it was launched in Product Hunt, so it's a very techie oriented space, and I think there's a lot of variables there, and one of the things is like tech is becoming such a massive industry, and there's this need for not only developers but product managers, marketers, growth marketers, and we've definitely seen an increase in the number of people using our software, and um, I think definitely there's something there in empowering job seekers and giving them better tools, and that ties well with kind of like where the tide is going, where job seekers have a lot more power. We serve a lot of tech boot camps, for example. So I think boot camps are also doing a great job of empowering people from one industry and getting them into new industries, these industries that are growing, which are tech.
The uh, we know the underlying reasons why tech hiring ends up being a leader in many hiring conversations. Though it's a relatively smaller occupation field, just there's a huge demand for it, and it's some of our outgrowth, our fastest growing portions of our economy. We're generations old. Degrees mismatch. There's a lot of underlying issues that have given us constraint. Um, but that sometimes trickles into other corners of the economy. You have tech adjacent roles that
Yeah.
follow what software engineers want, and then those tech adjacent roles can bleed into sales and marketing, and then sales and marketing go to a whole bunch of other organizations, and then you can kind of see a further bleed out. Um, this pandemic, I guess, has been a really interesting time for lots of reasons. One of which being it was so universal. This both wage inflation, we're seeing it in hourly workers as much as we are seeing it in high demand software workers. Um, I wonder, though, you're noting that your experience is most with a probably among the higher income salaried employees. Do you think some of the lessons you're focused on about thinking about the employee in the job seeking search experience, does that make sense for all sectors? Is it only in high demand tech jobs, or do you have lessons that feel universal?
Yeah, I think obviously, like there's certain things at the job search that apply to all industries. Ideally, Hunter will get out of only serving mostly the tech industry, which is not really by choice. It's mostly, we're still a fairly small company, and that's kind of like the audience that has found it most useful. Um, but yeah, I think things like salary negotiation are really important. Things like really asking and pushing for those higher salaries, especially now where job seekers have so much power on their end. I think it was something like 8 million jobs are still unoccupied, or there's a ton of jobs that are unoccupied, and a lot of people that are unemployed. There's obviously like a disconnect there, and the job seeker has a lot of power on their end. So obviously salary negotiation is really important. On our end, we like our whole product is about tracking your job search. So that applies to every single job seeker out there. Like it's really, when I went through my job search, like I said, 30, 40 job applications, it's really mentally tolling. It takes a real mental, like it's a really hard time psychologically. And like with any project, whenever I'm feeling um, overwhelmed by a project, what I do is just put it down on a notebook. Like these are the things I need to do. This is where I've been at. This is what I've done already. So we're big believers about like keeping your job search organized in order to, make that whole process a lot easier. And that applies to really any field, right? Where you're applying to many jobs. Yeah.
The I wonder if I mean, presumably, as you can continue to grow, hiring is something that you do yourself, but you also are adjacent to it a ton. Um, do you have early feelings on what behaviors companies should be changing to be more mindful about supporting the employer, or the employee in the job search, or does that seem a lost cause? We're already focused there. We just need to better arm the job seeker. Can companies do something to improve their own behavior, most commonly in supporting the job seeker side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, it's really a hard answer, just because it really, again, everything depends the size of the company, right? Like I just,
Mhm.
I mean, you talked to Sam. Sam is actually my first hire, so I just went
Mhm.
through the process of hiring
Right.
very recently, and my hiring process is going to be very different than the hiring process for a Google or an Uber or Facebook.
Of course.
It's just the volume, right? Like I personally interviewed every single person, every single candidate. I took it onto myself to, you know, follow up after each interview. And the feedback I got was like, this was one of the best hiring processes I've had. So I think treating people in a human and kind way is probably like a very important thing to do. Um, but again, like I said, it's a very complex ecosystem. You have not only employers and candidates, but everything in the middle is just this incredible ecosystem of tools and companies and educational institutions, and it's just I think it's a very big challenge to solve this problem, just because of the how complex the ecosystem is. You have educational institutions closer to the candidate, and then somewhere in the middle between these two, you have job search aggregators like LinkedIn and Indeed, and then on the employer side, you have the big applicant tracking systems, which are using all these algorithms to kind of like make sense of the thousands of applications they're receiving on a daily basis. And within each of those connections, you have revenue and monetary different like revenue alignment, right? Where like Indeed is not going to stop showing you like or how do I say this? So basically, Indeed makes the most money when they get the most clicks.
Right.
So basically, they gain the most from having job seekers apply to the most number of jobs, which
Yep.
is not always the best for the employer, so to speak. So because suddenly the employer is flooded with like 20,000 applications for one single job, like it's impossible to have the resources to parse through 20,000 applications. So you end up having to go with these algorithms and tools that are maybe not the ideal way of recruiting. So that is all to say, it's a very complex ecosystem. I don't really have a good answer for
Well,
do I see
Rennie, let
like
me. I appreciate your demurrament, but I feel like you're hitting on one theme that comes up a ton in both like research and reporting we do. Um, Several years back, there was something charmingly called the slow hiring movement, which
Mm,
was in response to we're growing so fast, we need to get butts in the seats, and there was an effort to say like, well, actually maybe not. Um, Laszlo Bach, he wrote the iconic Google People book, Work Rules. He writes a ton about how methodical Google had tried to be in its earliest days. They then got a rotten reputation for moving way too slow. There's always probably some calibration there, but so much of the hiring process, even when we in interviews say want something different, it sure seems a lot of hiring managers still feel like I need my application numbers to be up. Why? Because if I get more, maybe I'm more likely to find someone good, as
yeah.
opposed to I want to increase quality. Fascinated by, 10 to 15 years ago, the story was LinkedIn's going to kill the recruiting industry. And then, of course, the opposite happened. LinkedIn became a vital tool for the recruiting industry. And one of the promises that the best recruiters often offer is fewer. We will only give you the fewer best applicants. And Rennie, I think this is what you alluded to. When you're hiring at a lower volume, it's easier to say, I'm going to give a human touch, I'm going to be more methodical, I'm going to respond to everyone. And when we talk to employers that are either hiring at a large scale or they're at a growth cycle and that feels overwhelming, they're the first ones to say, I know I'm supposed to respond to everyone. I know I shouldn't ghost applicants, but I just can't respond
Mm,
to everyone or everywhere. And so a bunch of HR tech has tried to solve that side of the equation.
yeah.
You are in part saying maybe we should just give the job seeker more power. And I wonder if maybe we want to work on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, I think there's value in both areas, right? Like I said, like you can't there is no like one single application that could solve all these issues, right? Like
Right.
because eventually as a company, you need to kind of like pick a side because I do think LinkedIn is a great like they have all the cards on the table to build an
Yeah.
incredible just like ecosystem from both sides. But besides LinkedIn, I don't think anybody else has like what they would require to build both sides. So for now, as Hunter, as a company, we're kind of like sticking to empowering the job seeker. And I'm sure I'm not super up to date with what the applicant tracking systems are doing to improve that process and um, to better qualify resumes or whatnot. But yeah, I just think that on our end, we think that there's so many little problems that job seekers have, like applying to 10 jobs, for example, probably takes a full day. You're just repeating the same information, inputting all that info, and like just a lot of repetitive work. So Hunter wants to solve all those little issues that job seekers have currently, and really empower them throughout their search. The way we like to think about it is, salespeople have CRMs. Hunter is literally a CRM for the job seeker. So just like salespeople have these customer relationship management tools where they input all their customers and drag those customers from a warm lead to a hot lead to closed. It's very similar process to what the job seeker is doing, where they're importing an opportunity. This is in my wish list. I move it to applied. I move it to interview. I move it to offer. You can actually see conversion rates from one stage to the next. So that level of empowerment where the job seeker can literally attack the job search in a very systematical way, and have the same tools that the recruiters have on their end, which is something very similar, where instead of it being jobs, it's candidates that they're dragging through like potential to first call, second call, interview, offer. Um, so yeah, I think there's value in attacking the problem in many different ways. Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think it's true. We know adapting the job search for the job seeker will continue to evolve. I like though the think small. Seems like good advice for the employer, and you're aiming to give employees or the job seekers that experience. Rennie, thank you for the chat here on Culture Builder Live. As always, this will show up in the Culture Builder newsletter, which you should subscribe to at technically/subscribe. And we'll recap on technically the many lessons from this and other conversations on how job search can continue to bend toward job seekers. Rennie, thank you. We'll make sure to drop links to Hunter here and elsewhere in the technically recap. Thank you, Rennie. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.